Hey, Joyful Journeyer, Anita Adams here, your host, and today I'm excited to introduce you to Trish Murray. After 25 years in business and marketing, Trish found herself on a 10-year-long healing journey, exploring and integrating a myriad of resources and practices to recalibrate burnout, body, mind, and soul, and reshape a life of work into a life 360 degrees. Today, Trisha's focus is fast tracking CEOs and business owners towards individual inspired insights encoded into their birth data that shape their unique soul style and equips them with more soul aligned solutions inside their business and beyond. Trish integrates her study in psychology, marketing, and business with principles and practices from yoga therapy, astrology, and human design for more meaning, purpose, and alignment between soul and business. All right, welcome, Trish. I am so pleased to have you here with us today to learn more about you and the work you do. And I want to dissect this beautiful, beautiful bio that you gave me. I have questions. Can we start there?
Absolutely. Thank you. Nice to be here.
It is so good to have you. Okay. This first little bit, I'm so super curious about reshape a life of work into a life 360 degrees. I don't understand that. Explain that to me a little.
Well, I think there's probably at least one listener or viewer who will understand the treadmill.
Oh, okay.
And the treadmill is the life of work. The treadmill is you get up, you go to work, you come home, you go to sleep, and you get up and you keep doing that over and over and over again. And I was probably just coming up on my midlife shift when it really started to become very I felt it. I felt that there was a shift coming, and that shift really started to come into focus when through meditation and that kind of thing, when I started to hear this life 360. Life is so much more than just the work. Life is so much more than just the business and or just the fill in the blank, whatever it is for you. And so that was for me one of the biggest pivot points that I hit in my midlife journey was really recognizing that I had constructed a life of work, working all the time, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and not much else. But at the same time, everything else had become or had come to feel like work, right? Birthday parties, going out with friends. It was all just starting to feel like duty and obligation as opposed to fun and excitement and joy. So that's my life of work into a life 360.
Okay, I get that. What do you think that thing was that you were hearing that life is more than 360?
Oh, well, I was actually just listening to one of your recent podcasts called Trust the Niggles.
Huh?
And oh my gosh, the niggles is that what I kind of refer to it as our inner oracle or that inner voice of wisdom, just that intuitive part of us that is so strong and trying to communicate, like our soul voice, maybe even is what some people might call it. So I think of the niggles as equally vital as what you pointed out in that podcast. And I think that was really what I was tuning into through that period of time was, like the voice was just getting stronger and stronger because I hadn't been tuning in. I hadn't been sort of listening with that deeper intuitive base.
Right. Awesome. I love that. And I haven't heard inner oracle before, and I really I like that. I use inner wisdom, soul voice, the higher self, inner oracle.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
good.
well, it's just there's so much wisdom. So I think there's a reason why that particular word was given to me for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, got it. Now, human design, that's another thing that
Yeah.
you talk about lightly on your bio, and I haven't heard that term either. What is
Okay.
human design?
Well, so human design is actually, I would say, kind of an expansion off of Western astrology, and actually it pulls in a lot of different things like the Chinese I Ching and Eastern astrology, like Vedic astrology. It pulls in quantum physics, which is another one of my little side interests, is understanding the whole field and the energy. So my interpretation of it is that it is the next iteration of the insights that we would get through our astrological natal chart. And because I work with people on both sides of that, I feel like human design brings us to a place of precision insights. There's a precision nature to the themes and that come through our human design charts that I don't get when I'm working solely with someone's astrology or numerology.
Okay, I need a little more clarity here. So you talk about your birth data. Is that the astrological signs and time that you're born and all that stuff?
Well, so starting with your birth data, you can just work with some basic numerology and get some pretty deep insight about, how we are wired, how, that unique aspect of who we are at a soul level. And, like to just back up a little bit, in the corporate world, I worked a lot with personality type profiling and that kind of stuff. As part of my iteration into where I'm at right now. And the one thing that kind of really stood out for me is in some of the profiling tools, they talk about your natural style and your adaptive style. And I thought, isn't that interesting that we have this adaptive style? And so, it's nice to know that we can adapt to certain situations or environments or circumstances. But is adapting the ultimate goal? Or is the goal finding a way to bring ourselves more in alignment with our natural style, or I refer to it as our soul style, because I'm using that sort of birth data, and it just sent me down a rabbit hole to
Right.
really start thinking about what is the optimal expression for us. Is it to be in our adaptive style, or is it to find our way into and create a world, our corner of the world, in a way that really does reflect who we are at a soul level and that natural style? So, so the birth data was a bit of an experiment.
Mm.
And I have been trying to remember all the steps back that I took to get here, and some of them are going to escape me. But what it really came down to is, I was, pardon my, can I swear on your podcast?
Go for it.
Okay, I was fucking around with a whole bunch of stuff in the pursuit of meaning and purpose and a deeper
Yeah.
sense of alignment with that life 360, and what does that look like, and finding my way into work that had a deeper meaning to me, for a lot of reasons. And when I started to look at all of the sort of the data that I was gathering by looking at my numerology, my astrology, my human design, I was like, this is who I actually really am. This is
Mm.
who I really am. And I didn't know it intellectually. It was like this, it was this heart feeling of this theme or this piece here resonates so strongly for me, and I don't even know why.
Mm.
Yeah. So that was kind of the journey, and then I started doing case stories around, sort of well-known or high-profile people, just to be able to prove to myself, because I'm a bit of a scientist at heart. Um, and ironically, the human design piece was presented to me way back in 2015. And there's two sides to human design. One is a very traditional approach that was written by a fellow, and I'm probably not going to say his name right, but Ra Uru. And then it's been adapted into sort of a quantum conversation, very high vibrational language, by a woman by the name of Karen Curry Parker. That's who I study with. And the themes are expansive, right?
Mm.
And so human design is really, it's a way of understanding ourselves. It's a way of understanding, if you were to think of, we came into this life with a bit of a blueprint for how we could piece together and move ourselves into the fullest expression of the divine, which we
Mm.
are. Human design helps us understand what those themes are, what those, potential obstacles are that we might come up against, what may be the soul curriculum or the lessons that we're here to learn in pursuit of soul growth.
Okay. Um, I hadn't intended to go down this path when we got on a conversation, and yet I feel really called to understand
Okay.
this deeper. If we can um, spend a little more time, invest a little more time on this, because I feel that that is our job as human beings, is to really understand who we are. Know thyself, know thyself. And I believe there are different ways to know thyself. And for me, that process has been simply just going for a walk in the forest and connecting to my environment, and in so doing I feel like I'm connecting to my higher self, to God, to all that is.
Mhm.
And you are sharing another way to understand who you really are, and I want to understand this other way. So
Yeah,
can we dive in a little deeper with
sure.
okay,
Yeah.
so where do we start with that conversation?
Well, so
Maybe your
let me,
story. Should we
okay.
start there? Yeah.
Ooh, it's long. I'll try and pull out the highlights. So,
Okay.
I mean, let's just back up to 2012, because that's in truth where I would say that the story actually really kicked into high gear for me. And I've been doing a lot of work with people who are going through that midlife shift. And one of the things that I've come to start with people is recognizing that one of the reasons why we call it a midlife crisis, in my opinion, is that we have no idea the astrological events that are going on through that 15-year period, from about 37 to a 60, let's say 50 for sure. And then the 50s to 60s, it's a whole other decade where we're integrating so much stuff that we've been kind of been brought through, if we've been open to receiving um, from those sort of astrological experiences. And I'm talking about things like, there's in astrology, they talk about returns, right? Certain planets return to the same place as they were when we were born, and that creates an experience for us, an experience based around certain themes, around, there were certain energies that are coming in a stronger way. In numerology, we map out people's personal pyramids, and we can find 4 pivot points that have, again, a specific theme. And it's like, if you imagine before you came into this life, and I'm going to honor the people who may not believe in multiple lifetimes, because I don't think you have to believe that in order to get a hold of what I'm saying. So you come into this life, but before you came, you went through a strategic planning process with the divine, with the creator, God, whatever you refer to that as. And you guys all map out like what's going to happen in this lifetime, major milestones, themes you want to focus on, where you're probably going to need a little bit more support from the divine at certain points in your life. And then you forget it all when you get here. And my experience is that the numerology, the astrology, the human design is all helping us to remember what it is that we actually signed on for when we came, and to make that journey in a far more peaceful, easy way. My journey was not peaceful. It was not easy. And it was not fast. It was long. I took the long way around. And
Can I ask a quick question before we get
yes.
on to the
Hmm.
story? And maybe it's not a quick question. Um, why are we forgetting? Why are we coming to live our life with a blank slate and having to, what often feels like, fighting to remember?
Yeah.
Ready to find ourselves? Or is that too big of a question to ask?
It is, in my opinion, I think that is a huge
Right.
question. And I think that that would take us down some pretty intense rabbit holes. I think we could look at it from the perspective of part of the journey is the remembering,
Mhm.
right?
Well,
If
I
we want to leave
100%
it,
believe that. I do believe that we are here to remember who we really are. I just
yeah,
never really understood why we forgot in the first place. Is it
yeah.
because that's how we learn to evolve is by the remembering process, the
Well, again, I'm going to ask for permission because it's your podcast. Um,
say whatever
and
you
again,
like.
it'll just be based on my opinion and some of the rabbit holes that I have gone
Yeah.
down. But there's a few theories that I think are plausible. Number one, we are meant to find joy in the remembering,
Ah, like that.
and
That speaks to me.
and um, and I think that whether your audience is ready for this particular theory or not, I personally believe that there's been a lot of influence in our world that has caused us to forget and to stay forgetting, and also a lot of influences that have hidden ways and means for us to remember and to relearn or to expand on where we came in at if you ascribe to the multiple lifetimes. And I was just working on a workshop presentation, and one of the intro slides that I share with people is um, that there's hidden knowledge, there's hidden wisdom behind locked doors, and those doors have been locked for a reason. um, and some of those reasons aren't very nice to talk about, but they are what they are. And again, this is just a theory of mine.
Mhm.
Um, but if you think about the locked doors, one of those locked doors for me, or one of those influences for me, keeping a door locked, is how things are marketed. And this is my previous career.
Mhm.
I'm very well versed in a lot of the tricks and a lot of the tools and a lot of the things that happen in marketing, and they're not always above board. Some of it's actual bullshit, and some of it's actually deceptive. And as consumers, we all kind of know that, but we don't know that. And so I look at just even where we started this conversation in terms of how has numerology and astrology been marketed? Well, it's been marketed as this like ooh woo stuff, and it's so unattainable, and the average person can't ever really understand that. No, I don't agree with that. I
Mhm.
don't personally agree with that. Or it's been marketed as occult, and that's actually a true definition when you understand what occult means. It means hidden, obscured, or not even, or maybe like not even understandable with the rational mind. So I get all of that. I would actually agree that it is kind of occult. It's been hidden away.
Mhm.
But I think that there's spiritual and religious reasons why we haven't been invited to go down that path. And that again is part of the journey, I think, for all of us, is sorting through what do we really believe is true and what is not
Mhm.
true, what is really serving us and what is not serving us, and what did our souls come here to explore this time round.
Mhm. That's beautiful. I love that. I believe that there's a certain readiness that we have to arrive at before doors can be opened, before we
Yes.
can really see
Yeah, I
what is
agree.
there.
I
And
agree.
that's the journey, I suppose. That's we're working to ready ourselves for the opening of the next door. And I feel
Yeah,
like that's a lot about what I'm here to do personally, and to assist my clients to do is help them open those doors and then
right.
really understand who they are, what they want, why it matters, and looking deep into to the depths of our being.
Well, and that in and of itself isn't for everybody.
No,
And I
100%.
and I
No.
learned this actually when as I work with the numerology. So in numerology, I usually start with somebody with their core number, and the numbers work from 2 until 10, and then they move into sort of master numbers. But let's just work 2 until 10, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And as I've worked with people around this, I have come to, again, another theory that if someone has come into this life with a core number of 4, I can't work with them the way that I would work with somebody who's at a core number of 9.
Hmm.
And it's my belief right now that, and it's like I said, guys, I'm working with a theory here.
Mhm.
It's my belief right now that, part of that is because we're at that stage of growth, and we're integrating all of the 4 elements if you've come in with a core 4, and you're not ready for a core 9 because there's all these other things that we learn
Right.
as a core 5, as a core 6, as a core 7, that build on each other. And it's quite fascinating for me now to look at this. And then the question becomes, well, do we only come here 9 times? I don't think so. I don't think so, but that's just my
So,
personal philosophy.
I know nothing about numerology.
Okay.
So is the number supposed to correspond with the number of times you've been reincarnated? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm No, because that would mean that we only come here 9 times, right? Or
Right.
10 times or 11 times, right? And I don't believe that that's necessarily true. But I do believe it's a reflection of the depth of learning. So maybe we're
Right.
coming back as a core 3, but this time we're learning sort of more of the deeper insights that surround what it is to be a core 3 or a core 9, right? The challenges will maybe be a little bit different this time around, because we're wanting to integrate that even deeper.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's just a fun little theory that I'm working with.
I like it. It's really interesting. How do you get your core number? How do you determine your core number?
That's a super fun, easy thing. If you just take the numbers of your birth date, translate them into numbers, right? So if let's just use May 5th or May 8th of 1972, right? And you're adding the 5 and the 8 and the 1, the 9, the 7, and the 2 together. And then you're going to distill that down to, well, let's just use that as an example.
Yeah.
Or if you want to use your number, Anita, take your numbers,
Yeah.
take your birth date, and just add them up. And so if you get to something like, let's just say you get a 29,
Yeah.
right? That's what your number adds up to. You're going to distill that down to the next number, which is an 11.
Wait a minute. Wait. What? How do you go from
Because
29 to 11?
because you're just going to keep adding the numbers together, right?
Oh,
So
I see. I see. Okay.
mhm,
Until it becomes one number, like one
yeah,
single digit. Oh, that's super
yeah.
interesting. Okay.
As a rule,
Yeah.
we distill it down to one number. There are exceptions to the rule, and that was a good one, because if your number was 29 and you distill it down, 2 plus 9 is 11, you stay there, because a core 11 is a master number in numerology. And so
Right.
you don't distill it any further than that, because there's a whole theme that goes along with a core 11.
Right. Okay. So is it then, if I'm understanding correctly, is it that number is then correlated with a certain level of evolution that your soul has gone through, maybe? Is that it?
Possibly, but I try and keep it just in this context, in the context of this lifetime, um, and what you might be experiencing. What I believe, based on my own personal numbers and the work that I've been doing with people, is that it becomes an overarching theme to what what's gone on, and what's going on in your life. So I've got a client right now. She's a core 8, and a core 8 is really kind of, if I were to distill it down to 2 words, they're risers and strivers.
Mm,
And as soon as I said that phrase to her, she was, "Oh my God, that is totally me."
mm,
Right? There's a desire to want to achieve, and absolutely live from a place of independence, right? So there's this conversation always going on in terms of, how do I rise to be able to reach my next level of achievement, but also feel a sense of independence, doing it my way, doing it in a way that really fits me. Whereas a core 5 are freedom lovers, and they will organize their lives in such a way that they are either experiencing more freedom or they are able to live more fully in that life 360 with a sense of love. Like they
Okay.
just love their life, and they, so I see this a lot with people who have split careers, right? Maybe you're a bartender because you want to be a performer, right? Very often you'll find them in a core five, because they're piecing their life together for the
Yeah.
greatest amount of freedom and to live in every way the
Right.
life that they love.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that a bit. I have to be honest, I was a little worried that that maybe if I do my numbers, I'm going to discover that I'm a 2 or 3, and in my mind, I automatically went to that is not
A
as
bad thing.
involved. Yeah, that it's a
Yeah,
bad thing, and I'm like,
yeah,
why
it's
did I
not.
do that? Like that's an old little self-belief of that not enoughness sort of
Yeah.
coming up. And it's so funny, I haven't felt that in a long time, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, maybe I'm only a 3 and therefore I'm not enough. But
Yeah,
that's
and
not what
it's
you're saying. That's
it's
not what
so
you're saying.
interesting, that you say that, Anita, because I hear that a lot from people, especially in workshops. They're like, "Oh, I'm only a core 3." I'm like, "Only? Oh my gosh. Let me tell you what a core 3 is all
Right.
about." Right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm hesitant about throwing that theory out there because I don't know. It
Right.
just makes sense to me because when I see people who are core 8s or core 3s, I can see them working from this really stable base of what a core 2 is all about. It's
Right.
like, okay, so you learn that, we learn that, and I'm looking at it even from my own perspective. I'm a core 11, and I look back on, oh yeah, man, I can tell that I have gone through the deep experiential philosophical learning that would accompany somebody who's a core 7. I really learned to balance the ambition and the humanitarianism that
Right.
would accompany somebody who's a core 9, right? So
Mhm.
it kind of makes sense, but I don't think of it in terms of better or worse,
Or
less than
less
or
than or
more
what.
than.
Okay, good.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Is where
I
you're
think
on the
I think
journey.
of it as in terms of depth and layers of the onion.
Yeah, okay. And so is that what you're talking about when you say your soul style? Are you talking about
Mhm.
your sort of that core number, or is that different?
Yeah. Well, I think in my world, I think that there's all kinds of ways to find your soul style. Um, I I'm using it. I'm kind of taking ownership of that phrase for myself and introducing pieces to people based on whatever it is that they're looking for, mostly in the context of their business, right? But also, I work with a lot of business owners who understand that work of like life of work, and they are looking for how, what is it that will inspire them to recalibrate, right? So I do that more with, the pieces of numerology, pieces of astrology, and pieces of the human design that really is going to, I think, resonate the most and create that sense of inspiration. I don't know if you heard this recently, but I was just reading something about how kids learn more when they're inspired than when they're afraid. And I
Mm,
said to myself, well, I guess that we're all kids then.
yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean,
Right.
I would think that when we're inspired, we're in that state of expansion, but when we're afraid, we kind of contract in on ourselves, and it's harder to learn when we're
Yeah.
fearful, for sure.
Yeah, and if you think back to what we've been talking about, right? Like remembering is it's kind of an exploration. It's kind
Hmm.
of Joseph Campbell or Carl Jung, they worked with that hero's journey,
Hmm.
and it really is about choosing to step out on that, and you can it's hard to do when you're afraid. It's
It
hard to
is
do when
hard.
you're tired. It's hard to do when you're burned out. It's hard to do when, the pressure of the world is just
Yeah.
weighing on your shoulders. And, the more we can get ourselves to a place of curiosity, I think that's a good
That is a theme that has come back again and again on the show, with numerous guests, as being in a state of curiosity.
thing.
We can embrace a curious nature, that we will have that that uncovering, I guess, the discovery, the
Yeah.
remembering, the
Well,
and the
and
joy in that too.
on a whole other tangent, that's actually kind of what I'm thinking about when we were talking about the age of Aquarius, right? And
Oh,
what
we're
is
gonna go
the age of
there.
Aquarius, right? And Aquarius obviously is a sign in the zodiac, in the Western zodiac, and um, it's there was a when I started to kind of study into the age of Aquarius to understand what that was, because in my opinion, everything that we see going on in our external world right now like it lines up very closely to what those themes are that are associated to the age of Aquarius. Um, Even the crazy chaotic stuff, it makes sense if you kind of are able to look at it through this lens of what is Aquarius. Aquarius is all about change, because it's ruled by the planet Uranus. Change and a little bit and disruption, and intentionally looking for ways to challenge the status quo. And
Hmm.
I mean, these are all things that resonate with me now.
Well,
If you
this is the state of the world right now. This is what we're
Yeah,
living in.
yeah, but if you'd asked me to entertain these ideas in 2012, I would have been like, no, got no capacity for that, no change, no, that I'm because of burnout, right? I was
Yeah.
totally burned out.
Well, and I would love to have a conversation about the age of Aquarius. I want to come back though, because you were telling
Yeah,
us about your personal story, and then you just mentioned again I was in a state of burnout. So I feel like maybe we're coming
yeah.
back to that point. So can we pick up where we left off on where you were on your journey that brought you to what you're doing today?
Yeah, and I love doing that, because I think that, one of the things that I will often say to people is that the very first thing that I needed to do for myself was to create mind space. I
Mm.
couldn't entertain any of this stuff. I couldn't take in this new concept, these new, ideas without creating mind space. And what I chose to do in order to create that is it's something I would never ask anybody else to do, because it was extreme at times. But that was the first thing. So being able, having this conversation about where I was, the burnout was a big thing. um, I made the choices that I needed to make in order to bring myself into a state where I could heal, and the healing accompanied, creating space in my mind, um, to just consider other options and other thoughts. But the healing journey in and of itself was probably, you know, and I'm not sure that I could say that I'm done, right? I think that it's something that I'm always learning. And that I was saying to you that that was one thing that really landed for me when I started working with my human design chart. Because one of the themes for me is embodiment, and, or said another way, the love of the body, learning to love my body physically, love my body, like appreciate every single wrinkle, every single scar, every single you know problem area, right? Whatever language we want to use.
Mhm.
Um but also appreciating and loving on it in from an emotional perspective, right? Like thinking about all the thoughts that we think about that aren't always very kind towards ourselves,
Mhm.
and then really learning to love the body as a vessel for the divine spirit, right? For the soul to live the best life ever, right? A lot
Mhm.
loving the body for that purpose. So I worked with a lot of different modalities, a lot of different practices in order to bring myself to a place of, mm, not balance, but maybe equilibrium is a better word. And so maybe it's helpful for your audience, because I don't really know where they are in their journey. But for me, there were kind of three things that I did, and I really started with body-based practices. I went back into yoga. I had a on and off relationship with yoga for, gosh, 25 years at the time, and I made a commitment to my yoga practice. And that involved, of course, meditation, and that sort of served as a mind based practice. So there's body-based practices, mind-based practices, and then spiritual or energetic, maybe based practices. And I think part of that journey, right? We're talking about, the joy in remembering, the joy in bringing ourselves out of burnout or creating mind space or whatever we're doing. Part of that is I think really starting to tune into that inner oracle that we talked about, that inner oracle, and listening for when she or he wants to say, I think it's time for a mind-based practice now, right? I think it's time to go to a spiritual or an energetic type practice now. And yeah, so the body-based practices was big, right? Naturopaths, that kind of thing, homeopathy. I work with a lot of herbals right now. And then the mind-based practices was, of course, meditation. I learned something called heart-brain coherence. You can find more out about that. I think it's a very powerful experience through Heart Math Institute. And then the spiritual or the energetic experiences, that would have been things like Reiki, right? I went and got my level 1-2 Reiki certification. And then, I kind of started to wrap it all up into that holistic or integrated thing that is yoga, right? Union between body, mind, and spirit. When I studied yoga, I went to study as a teacher, got my teacher training, and then I added on to that with yoga therapy. And that, I think, was where we first started talking, Anita, about somatic practices. This idea that sometimes the pain that we have in our body isn't as a result of a physical cause. And that is a complete mind shift. For me, it was, and for most people that I talk to, opening the locked door to this notion that, the emotion that we've experienced in our life, the experiences that we've had, whether they've been traumatic or not, maybe they've been extremely positive, but all of that gets stored in our body at an energetic level. And that is it's a beautiful journey to take, because I think it introduces us to our body in a whole different way.
Yeah. 100%. You said a number of things here that I really like. And I want to just touch on a few of them and see if I'm getting it. So loving the body, creating that space of love for the body. And I really believe, I can't remember what your exact words were, but I feel like our philosophies are the same here, that when we really love who we are, that opens us up to receive more of those messages from, the inner oracle or God or source or whatever your word is for that. So I think that is really key. And I get the what I call truth bumps when I say something that I think is really powerfully true.
I love that.
And I just got those truth bumps. Loving the self. So in your practice and what you believe to create that full body of love of self, you need to have a body-based practice, a mind-based practice, and a spirit-based practice. Is that what you're saying? That to create that love of self?
Well, what I would say as a caveat to that is that was the journey that I went through.
Sure.
That was the path that I followed. And I went through that cycle a number of times, back to, is the core number a reflection of where we are in our soul path? Yes, and it's probably a reflection of multiple times, right? Same thing with the body-based, mind-based, spirit-based. I went through multiple layers of that, starting with like a naturopath, and now I'm working with herbals, like moving away from sort of the manufactured supplements to getting back to the raw herbs. So that's like 10 years later, I'm still working with body-based practices to support the physical body, but at a very different level than, or a very different place than where I would have started necessarily, right? Or even with chiropractic. Chiropractic was a big part of it to start with. It is still, but there have been other things that have been kind of woven in there.
Right. Okay. I get that. And am I also hearing that yoga therapy or yoga has been your go-to that combines those three practices, the mind, body, and soul?
Yeah, and you're gonna love this. I mean, I think maybe you'll love this because I love this part.
I love your energy
um,
right now. You're very lit up.
when I was studying psychology, I love psychology,
Right.
um, and I was studying psychology kind of almost at the same time as I was studying yoga therapy, and I found this book called Eastern Body, Western Mind.
Ah,
So let me leave your, before I forget to do this, I would like to share three resources that I think your audience will find helpful no matter where they are in their journey. Number one, if you haven't already, folks, found Louise Hay, Heal Your Body. It's like almost like somatic 101, right?
mm,
Just even kind of getting your head around this notion that emotions can be responsible for dis-ease and
mhm.
illness for us. Number two, The Emotion Code by Bradley Nelson. And what I loved about the Emotion Code was, yes, you can go and find emotion code practitioners, but he makes it so accessible for people to practice his process on your own. And that's what I ended up doing because I couldn't find an emotion code practitioner. I learned how to do it for myself and then, did it for some of my yoga clients. But so that was number two, The Emotion Code by Bradley Nelson. Number three, Eastern Body, Western Mind. And so let me come back on this because while I was studying psychology, as I love it, studying yoga therapy, Anodea Judith, and that's the author of Eastern Body, Western Mind, Anodea Judith. I think her name is spelled Anodea, Anodea Judith. She is a PhD psychologist, and she has like basically woven psychology in together with the chakras
Mm,
from yoga. And so she will go through this, like when you read this book and you start to realize, like, where our chakras either get out of balance or where we maybe have an over expression, like we're like a I want to say overabundance, but she uses the word excess or deficiency, and it creates um situations that we're probably constantly dealing with, right? Those same things that we keep coming up against. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant book. It might be right, like textbooky to some people, but for me, it was just the perfect blend of these two worlds that I had been living in, right? Psychology and yoga, and really looking for ways to integrate that both for myself as well as expanding the conversation that I was having with CEOs and business owners about, I know what's going on in your physical body. Here's something else that you can go and work with. Um, and just giving people more resources, more things to think about than just the conventional, I need to go and, well, in my language, take a pill.
right, right. Looking more deeply, lifting the head,
Yeah.
lifting the hood, and
Yeah.
understanding what's really going on
Yeah.
with your body, mind, body, and spirit. I think
Yeah.
that's really great.
Yeah, and I'm not being disparaging towards taking a pill because I think that that is absolutely 100% necessary for a lot of people until they reach through the body-based practices, the mind-based practices, and
Yeah.
the energy until we move through our soul growth and open up to the possibility that there's maybe a different way to um, remedy the situation.
I want to thank you for saying that. I think that's really important. And sometimes I know myself included, I forget because I have a healthy body. I do not need to turn to medication. And
Right.
yet, some people I deeply love and care about, I know they need that support.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I think we need, as a society, as a whole, we need more compassion around that. So I'm really glad you presenced that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Some great resources that you're offering here, and we'll include them in the show notes. I have read Louise Hay's book. She was transformative for me as a young woman. I'm really glad I discovered her materials, and she was the first person that I've ever came across who helped me understand that what you think can really shape your reality. And
Mhm.
it's a really her work. A lot of her work is very powerful. I highly recommend that. The other two
Well, and
books.
that's a conversation like we could have all day long every day right now, because I think that there is so much, again, from my past world, so much from the marketing and the media and the messaging that is keeping us on a track that is not allowing us to kind of expand our minds
Yeah,
and think more divergently about the potential that, well, maybe it is the age of Aquarius, but even if it isn't, like,
yeah.
maybe maybe I do need to go and find more about who I am, and what did I come here to do, right? Yeah.
And is that a conversation that we could build an episode around? Because I think it's really interesting. Can we offer tips for people on how to navigate the craziness of media? Um, okay.
I'm only laughing because my only solution for that, unless your job depends upon it, is like mind space, mind space, mind space.
Meaning ignore it? Like,
You got to turn it off,
uh,
and really start to limit how much
you
you're listening to
consume.
it.
Yeah.
And the other side of it is divergent, going and finding very divergent sources, people who might even be saying something that you believe is fundamentally incorrect. And I can only say this because I have lived this. I've forced myself to go and listen to people who I thought were just so fundamentally wrong. And the eye opener for me, Anita, was, wow, that is not at all what I have come to believe about that person. Like, hearing them in their own words, hearing them in full
Oh, I see.
conversations,
Yeah.
as opposed to what media does, which is sound bites,
Right.
right, to support a storyline.
Yeah.
Um, it was it was absolutely foundational for me, the divergence away from, like, mainstream, but
Yeah.
also just quieting a lot of that and dedicating more time to my spiritual practice, my soul
Mm.
practice, those body-based practices, the mind-based
Right.
practices.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of that is so healthy for you.
Mhm.
Really interesting. I've been actually contemplating going and doing some research, not research, but listening to a particular politician
Oh,
who
yeah.
I am totally against, but I'm totally against because of everything I've heard in the media. And
Yeah.
truthfully, I haven't listened to this politician speak much himself. And I have a hard time believing that I could possibly agree with anything he has to say. But I realize that my opinion
Yeah.
is shaped by what I've been reading.
Yes.
So, and
Yeah.
that's dangerous. That's really dangerous. So,
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I come at it from a perspective of, I've spent almost 30 years in that industry. I started my career in media and moved into sort of marketing strategy and that kind of thing. But I I just know how the game works. And
mhm.
even though I knew, I still found myself kind of just going along for a while, until a certain set of experiences just like jarred me out of that space in my head. And it's not like I hadn't been taking in divergent thoughts, right? I'd been on my journey for probably 8 years for sure, um, maybe 10 by then. And it was it was a tough, it was a tough experience for me from a different perspective. Tough because, we all have to kind of realize that, oh God, I was going along. Ugh,
Mm,
didn't like that. I
mm,
never thought of myself as a go alonger, but here I was.
mm.
And it was even harder, and that was a lot of like healing, deep healing that had to go on for me personally, because I had been a part of it. Even
Ah,
if I hadn't been a part of it, I was still a part of it.
right.
you know?
Which could be soul destroying if you're feeling like you're out of alignment with who you are meant to be, what your soul purpose is.
But to answer your question, yeah, that'd be a fun conversation to have.
Okay, we'll have to consider that, and maybe we'll build a another conversation around that at another
Yeah.
time. Really interesting. I'd like to bring it back a little bit, and we'll wrap it up soon. The human design, the work that you do
Hmm.
with human design,
Yeah.
this soul styles. First, is there anything that you can share with our audience right now that will help them understand who they are better using your practices, the human design? Or have you already, maybe this, like the love of body is your technique, and going in with that body based practice, mind based practice, and spirit based practice, is that all
Yeah.
connected to human design, or
I
is that
think so. I think so. I mean, it's certainly all what led me to human design,
yeah.
right? Like all of those practices, I'm going to go divergent for a second here. One of my stopovers on my journey was working with something called the Kabbalion, and it's the Hermetic tradition. The Hermetic tradition has 7 universal principles. And what I really got to in one of those principles, it's the principle of correspondence. And it says that there is no separation.
Hmm.
Everything in the universe is connected. So
Mhm.
you hear this in the woo-woo circles, right? In the whole new age circles, right? Everybody's connected. We're all interconnected, and we are. From a physics perspective, we know that, but also just from a spiritual perspective, the spiritual traditions have told us that for thousands of years. But there's no separation. And so when I look at my journey now, and I think of all of those places that I've been to, either in my mind or in real, um, when every single one of them led me to kind of a turning point, right? Turning point where I started to work with something either more specifically or more um, deliberately, right? Being very specific about how I work with it. So I'm not an astrologer. I use astrology to be able to help people connect with their own inner oracle through their data, right? The same thing with human design. I study it in order to be able to use it in a very specific way, and I use it in a very deliberate way. But you're asking, like, did that all lead me, like is that all wrapped up in human design? I believe that it is,
Mm.
because when you look at what the backbone of human design is, it has taken into account a lot of the body-based practices that are available to people, the philosophy that sits behind those, right? The philosophy behind Reiki, the philosophy behind yoga, it's all in there. And I think it's a beautiful representation of a lot of different spiritual traditions. Um, from like the Jewish community, uh, not so much Judaic Christian, but um, because it's got aspects of Judaism in it. There's a reflection of the Chinese culture. There's a reflection of the Indian culture. There's a reflection of just so much.
Right.
And I think what sold me on quantum human physics or human design, where I didn't resonate with the traditional version of it, was because it's woven in quantum mechanics, quantum physics,
Oh,
and that
interesting.
is science,
Yeah.
right? So it for me, it just was it grounded
Right.
a lot of this very spiritual, wooey stuff, and it made it feel more grounded in science, like real science, and the way that I choose to use it, I am choosing to use it in a way that I think honors
Mhm.
the truth of science. It's an experiment. We have a theory we're working with, and we're going to go and do experiments to see what happens. Right? You have this theme in your chart. What does that actually mean? So I would like to leave your audience with one thing, because I think what I love about science is that it gives us an opportunity to build confidence in something. And when you're new to a lot of this stuff, if you've never heard of human design, if you kind of looked at astrology as being, no, thank you. And same thing with numerology. I think it's really helpful to work with something that gives you confidence, that
Mhm.
gives you a sense of, yeah, I think there's something to this. It may not be the whole thing, but it's something. There's something here. So right now we're in 2023, and in numerology, when you add those numbers up, you get to the number 7, and 7 carries with it, from an energetic perspective, um, sort of this feeling of going within, taking time, making time to reflect, to release, and to restore something in some aspect of your life. So I would invite your audience to just consider, how's that been showing up in your corner of the world. Now that's the global number, and then
Right.
we each have our own soul number based on our birthday. So go back to the number that we were using at the very beginning of this call, talking about our core number. If our birth date is May 8th, then we're going to take the month of May 5 and the day 8, and we're going to add it to 7, and then again distill it down to one number. So
Right.
you've got, what is that? 13 plus 7 is 20. 2 plus 0 together is a 2. So that person would be in a 2 year. And what is a 2 year? A 2 year is kind of, you're coming into something new, right? You're 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 off of a 1 year, right? A 1 year is all about new beginnings. You're starting something. A 2 is like kind of where you're just starting to see things maybe take shape.
Mm.
Maybe you're starting to look for some partners to advance it. And this is again where I start to bring it into the business perspective, right? One of my clients just launched a new product or a new service line. That was last year. And this year is all about, okay, how do we start to grow that? How do we start to really cultivate that? What are the things that we might consider? What do we want to look for in partners? That sort of stuff.
That's really, it's really cool. I love that. Do you happen to have like a one sheet or any resources that describe that not only the process,
Yeah.
but what the numbers, like the meaning, the core meaning of the numbers?
I do. I just wrote, this is my first year that I wrote this. It's a 2023 energy alignment guide. And
Cool.
so it helps you kind of get a sense of, what is this global number? What
Mm,
is my own soul style number?
mm,
And I walk you through this whole way of like, how do you test it?
yeah,
What are the things that I'm going to look for? And how can I play with this a little bit and play with it and
yeah.
have fun with it? Like it doesn't have to be super serious, right? This is fun stuff, really. When you get into it, it's really fun. It's really like you're going to sit there and go, I don't know how this works, but it does, and so it does, and so I love it.
That would be really fun. Would we be able
Yeah,
to get our hands on a copy of that so I can share it
yeah.
with my audience? That would be
Yeah, so I can either send you a download, and the download is just, you download it and you get it, and you get
awesome.
my monthly email from there, which you
Okay.
can unsubscribe to. But
Okay. No,
yeah,
why would
it's
anybody
just
want to unsubscribe? Okay, so it's an automatic sign up for your newsletter and you get this
yeah,
free download. Awesome.
yeah,
I
you
guess
bet.
who's signing up? I want to get my hands
So
on
I
that.
will send that link to you so that you can include it in the show notes for people.
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd
for
be
sure.
really great. Very good. And I will also include contact information for you in the show notes. But just quickly, what's the name of your website? Put it out here now so people can hear you say
Okay.
it.
So my website is soulstyle.me, www.soulstyle.me. And that's also my handle on Instagram is soulstyletrish.
Awesome.
And that's where you can find me.
Great. And that's where we'll get the download, right? For your the freebie that you're offering.
Yeah, you can get it off of my website, but I'll send you a direct link so that you can just get people right to it. They don't have to look for
Awesome. You are an angel. Okay, Trish, this was really fun, and I do see
Thank
having you back
you.
on the show again because you're a wealth of information. There's so many, oh my gosh, there's so many ways, different conversations I feel like you and I could have, and I'm feeling lit up by the things that you shared with
Well,
us.
Anita, I've done a lot of fucking around.
That's the answer, eh? How you find yourself is fucking
It's
around.
kind of true. Kind of true.
Awesome. And
All
with
right.
that, thank you, Joyful Journeyer, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, if you got some value out of this, please rate and review the show. That goes a long way for helping us to reach more people. And our mission is to raise the collective consciousness by having these kind of conversations. So help us do that by spreading the word. All right. We'll talk to you next time. Bye for now.